Scorpio, it's your in-depth year 2025 astrology forecast for the ascendant, the sun or the moon. I'm going to briefly outline how I'm going to structure the video. First of all, I'm going to look at two eclipses which occurred towards the end of 2024. They're very influential and they inform things as you go into the new year. I'm then going to share with you on screen your solar return. This backdrop energy is going to be prevalent through the whole 12 months. Now, your two ruling planets, traditional of Mars and modern of Pluto, are not on good terms as you go into the new year. So I need to guide you through this. But in terms of striking towards your goals and ambitions, Mars can be supportive to you if you really put the dedication in. Now, early in the new year, Mars is going to invert back into the sign of Cancer, where it had recently, for 8 weeks, towards the end of 24, spent time. That brings a spark of excitement through to the 18th of April. But on the 11th of January, we have a switch of the nodal axis. The North Node inverts into your 5th house and the South to your 11th. They're going to be with you in these locations for the next 18 months. But if you recall, since 2012, Neptune's been in your 5th house, and over the last couple of years, the steely energy of Saturn. How will this switch impact on their role? Because they're, of course, going to be moving later in the spring. So as we go into the year, there is a lot of activity around your 6th house, which is life's organisation, structure, small but important details, anything to do with fitness, work, diet, and also exercise. But there's also the possibility to socialise with people you know through the practical dimension of your life, whether it's other people when you take your kids to school that you meet, or perhaps co-workers. But because Venus and Mercury go into retrograde in that area, there can also be some stops and starts, particularly if you are looking for a new job. Now, right at the heart of March, we get the second in an eclipse series between the signs of Pisces and Virgo. This one's Virgo. Very powerful because it's very close to the cool energies of Saturn. By the 20th of the month, however, we get the start of the astrological year. The Sun returns to join up with Venus and Mercury in your 6th house, but that's also where we have a solar eclipse. And that solar eclipse on the 29th, if you are wanting to reform your life, gives you a big opportunity in the following 6 months. But then on the 30th of March, Neptune shimmies its way into your 6th house. If you are someone who's thought about changing your job and doing something where there's a more giving or compassionate dimension, the next near to 8 months could give you a window of opportunity. But Neptune's going to be joined by Saturn on the 25th of May. This is asking you to be very disciplined over the following 3 months and 8 days through to the start of September. And this means that part of your everyday routines may need to be micromanaged in a bit more of a careful manner. But if you're wanting, for example, to work from home, the fact that Saturn and Neptune link back to your modern ruler Pluto in your 4th house, that could work really well. But as the weeks go on, we have Jupiter, the planet of opportunity, move into your sister water sign of Cancer. The following year could see you break out and enjoy a really glorious travel adventure. It may even see you learn a new skill, go to college, or perhaps do an online course, even learn a foreign language. Your connections with places distant and people distant can definitely be emphasized by that. But then we got some heavy traffic in the sign of Cancer, and even if you're wanting to do things that are a little bit freer and more independent, your obligations and responsibilities may be a little bit inhibiting. There's going to be a Mercury retrograde with Aries in that practical area in March, but there's also one in July in your sector of success. So it's going to be important to make sure those lines of communication stay as crystal clear as possible. Now, as we go into September, Saturn returns back into the sign of Pisces, but we also have another two eclipses. What do they mean? It's very important for you personally in terms of balancing what you do for yourself, but also your connection to others. On the 22nd of October, Neptune returns to Pisces, your fifth house. The 8th of November, Uranus moves back into your sector of relating. But on the 20th of November, you have your personal new moon. It's a little bit complex, to be honest, because from the 19th to the 28th, there is a retrograde featuring Mercury in your sign, and Mercury is going to be very close to your new moon. So you have what's known as an inferior conjunction on your personal new moon, but it is going to forge a perfect arc in a trine with Neptune, but also in a lovely angle to Jupiter. So as much as Mercury retrogrades have quite the reputation for causing snags and snares and difficulties, I feel that you can end this year in inspirational form, particularly if you're wanting to manifest some individual talents as the curtain comes down on the year. Please stay with me for more. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. If you're new to my channel, it's lovely to have your company. If you have any thoughts, please share them. This is very much a community. If you're a returning visitor, it's great to have your company once more, and all your views and interactions are truly appreciated. About 50% of people who enjoy my videos regularly are yet to subscribe. If that's you, please help the channel to thrive. Click that sub button and also the bell notification symbol. Please take advantage of my unique year 2025 personal horoscope forecast promotion. If you order in 24, you'll get the rest of that year free, but in my special package of 30% off, you also get your life roadmap report. This will help you to understand the patterns that have played out in your life so far, get a much more intimate understanding of how these have played out and how you can work with them future forwards. But with your forecast as well, it's a fantastic amount of information, it's great value, totally unique for each person it's produced for. Please see the link below for more. If you'd like to talk to me personally, I am a consulting astrologer. Please check out my testimonials below. I don't edit these, as they come in, I share as is. Relationships are incredibly important for us all. Whether we want one or not, we have one with ourselves, our neighbours, our friends, our family members and our colleagues. If you'd like your relationships to work better, but use the power of Western tropical astrology, check out matchful.me. This app combines serious astrology with psychological profiling. It's not based on sun sign analysis. You can enjoy it by clicking on the link below, and if you type in Patrick in the coupon form, you'll also get an additional discount. So Scorpio, on the 18th of September, we have the first in a new eclipse series featuring Pisces. And this one is very close to Neptune. If you go back to 2012, when Neptune first moved into your fifth house, you may have had some really very special and vivid moments when it's come to expressing your talents, creativity and flair. There could also have been some special moments socially, perhaps even romantically too. But over the last couple of years, the rather steely energies of Saturn have been scrutinizing some of the strands that you were in before and maybe exposing some weaknesses. This particular lunar eclipse, as you go into the new year, is asking you to review what you've achieved, particularly with Neptune, since 2012. So have you dispersed your energy by scattering your attention? Have there been some people that you've spent time with that haven't necessarily come up to your expectations? Have you expanded your spiritual consciousness? There's every chance you have, but that's what that new eclipse is very much about. But on the 2nd of October, we have a mighty solar eclipse, but it's in a very psychological part of your situation, your 12th house. The host is the sign of balance, the air sign of Libra. Mercury's in the mix as well. Mercury here in the 12th house can make us a little anxious that people are not including us. We could feel a little bit isolated. If there is any psychological stuff floating around, perhaps to do with your past or some understandable parts of human nature that you're not quite integrating into your entire being, such as fears, our subconscious energies, and perhaps some stuff from your past that may need to come to a point of acceptance. And that's what that solar eclipse is asking you to do as you go through the first 3 or 4 months of the new year. So if there is some old stuff to disperse, you can do it. But I think the solar eclipse working with the lunar eclipse, even though they're two different series, suggests that you can be creative about the process. So it doesn't mean to say that if you're looking at tender stuff, it can't still be engaging, illuminating, and even enjoyable, particularly if you link up with someone who's a real light worker, or you read information which helps you to understand your inner worlds and motivation much more clearly. On the screen now, I'm showing your event chart right at the start of the year. Always important to be mindful of the two luminaries. The sun's always in your 3rd house at the turn of the year, giving you a desire to engage and chat, but the moon very close to the sun this year in the sign of Capricorn, because just as 24 came to a close, we had a new moon. And although the moon has drifted on, it's still for you in your 3rd house. So communication this year can be quite swift, but you need to make sure it's communication with a meaning. Now, you know that more than most signs, but it just suggests there could be a bit more interactivity with people immediately around you, neighbours, in your community, or even with some siblings throughout this year. But the other thing to be mindful in any natal chart is the planet which is most northerly, and in this year it is your traditional ruler of Mars. So you can see it's right up on your 10th house cusp. That suggests your desire for recognition is going to be very strong in 2025. And why not? But also, if you look at the position of your modern ruler, Pluto, that's right down on your 4th house, suggesting any shifts that are going on in your world will work out at the root of your existence. So, for example, where you're living. Now, Pluto can be to do with regeneration. So if there have been some tensions around the family part of dynamic, I feel that collective in Capricorn and Pluto being on the 4th house cusp could be interesting. But Mars right at the top of your chart certainly gives you a big push to raise your profile, to achieve greater acclaim. And if you are a Scorpio who's a little bit diffident about putting yourself forward, you're really being encouraged to do so with this particular solar return. But what about the relationship between Mars and Pluto? Well, when they're in an opposition, the willpower that they can confer is fantastic. I think the problem for you could be trying to get the balance between what you want to do in your worldly interaction and what you want to do around your home and family life. But it's also possible that you may want to move home and in some ways repair or renovate the new property, because I feel that is entirely possible. Also, if you work from home, you can still leverage up your influence with Mars's help, all through the conduit of good, swift communications, which could come from that collective in Capricorn. But what about the other players in the chart? I mentioned in my opening piece that Saturn has been like a cool wind over the last couple of years around your social life and romantic situation. But it also may have made you much more appreciative of who the solid citizens are. So Saturn starts the year in that part of your chart. It's going to be moving into the pragmatic 6th house, as we know, on the 25th of May, and Neptune is also there too. And remember, they're going to end the year in your 5th house as well. But Saturn forges a tricky right angle to Jupiter. If we think that Saturn is no and Jupiter is go, in terms of very, very basic terminology, Jupiter's in a part of your situation to do with long-term finance, being very entrepreneurial. It is the planet of trade. The 8th house is an area where you may want to show what you can do if you've got a business idea, but it is in retrograde, so just be conscious of that. So if you're feeling in the mood to speculate, which is the 5th house where Saturn is, you need to make sure you've really done your sums and research Saturn very carefully. Otherwise you could try something that just won't work out. Also, Mercury, the planet of everyday communication, but also of marketing, is in your 2nd house of everyday money. Now, Mercury and Jupiter are opposite, and that could give you a real sense of optimism. But if you are doing something where you have to speculate in order to accumulate, what Saturn's saying to you is you really need to weigh things up very, very carefully. But Mars, being right at the top of your chart, could give you the appetite for greater success. And because of the opposition with Pluto, you may be determined to overcome any obstacles, but that could see you keep ploughing forwards into a situation which will never render you a return. And the reason for this, Scorpio, is Mercury and Jupiter are both in signs where they're not at their best. So although the opposition between them can prime up a sense of positivity and possibility, take it all back to the maths. So Saturn in the 5th house is about risk, but it's also about romance potentially. Is there going to be someone that you find absolutely fascinating this year? If it's someone who's quite well heeled, or as you see it, quite successful, that might not necessarily be a precursor for a simpatico relationship. So Saturn squaring Jupiter, it came up to a peak on the 24th of December last year. They're going to come into conflict again in the middle of June, but this time Saturn will be in your sector of obligations and responsibilities, and Jupiter in your sector of freedom. So again, there could be a bit of inhibition. So your chart speaks towards a lot of ambition, but your tactics around finance need to be meticulously well planned. The other takeout for you is Venus. Venus is in your 4th house. Now, I mentioned with Pluto in the 4th house, if you are minded to find somewhere that you can in some ways improve decoratively or structurally, if you buy a property, that kind of revamp is very much in the realm of Pluto in the 4th. But Venus is much more of a decorative influence. Venus in the 4th house again could point towards some kind of warming up around a family relationship, but it is clashing with Uranus in your sector of relating. So there could be a little bit of an on-off around someone that you fancy. Maybe they're not totally available, maybe their practical circumstances don't quite work. But Venus in the 4th house and in Aquarius can make you a little bit easygoing. It can make you accepting if something isn't quite exactly as you want, but just be mindful that things could be a little bit chaotic around your love life, particularly if there is, kids to look after, older family members to consider, so things can be a little bit up and down. The other takeout is the North Node. It's obviously going to be moving on the 11th of January, but in your solar return, it's just in that 6th house. And that is forging a great link with Mars and also Pluto. So if you are wanting or open to shifting the structure of your life organization, perhaps with a new job or role, this chart looks very, very helpful and hopeful. So I think your ambition's going to be strong, your communicational skills can be pretty good, but when it comes to finance, don't be over optimistic. And if there's someone you hugely fancy, don't spoil them with massive gestures. Give it a bit of space and see how it unfolds. So on the 6th of January, Mars, your traditional ruler, inverts back into Cancer. Let's go back to the 4th of September. Mars moved into Cancer where it was until the early days of November for 8 weeks. Now Mars usually makes its way through each sign for 6. This is because Mars went into a retrograde in Leo in December, but it does mean that you get this additional time with Mars bursting back into a very explorative and very adventurous part of your chart. But he is going to be retracing his steps through to the 24th of February in your 9th house. So if you're trying to do something that's much more buccaneering and enterprising, it might not go quite as quick as you would like. Just be mindful of that. But that nodal axis on the 11th. The North Node gives us a kind of inner nudge. It's an instinctive pull towards something that can be good for us, particularly when it's the 5th house. It's known as the point of destiny. So when it comes to your love life or demonstrating your creative talents, if Saturn has seemed to, quieten things down, take away a little bit of the luster over the last couple of years, the North Node can certainly give you the opportunity to reinvigorate things. So it's truly exciting. But then we have Venus and Mercury making their way into Aries, your 6th house. The 6th house work can be practicalities, can be those everyday routines. Venus is about relating. If you're in a relationship, the more that you do those thoughtful gestures rather than the grand romantic ones, the more popular you're going to be. But if you're applying for a job, as Mercury travels into Aries at the start of March, but then goes into a retrograde, it may get a bit bogged down and tangled. In the middle of March, we have the second of the new eclipse series, this time in Virgo. Virgo for you, it's about your long-term plan. It's about your connections to others, your network, your friendship, but also your highest, more spiritual hopes. But it is opposite the position of Saturn. So if you're wanting something more on your terms and you're being a little bit unbending and unyielding, because remember you're a fixed sign, and also remember your 2 rulers could make you very willful throughout this year because they are in such a complex relationship, it could be counterproductive for you. However, on the 20th, we have the start of the Western tropical astrological year. The Sun moves into house 6. If you're accepting that some things do need to be reformed and refined in your situation, you'll embrace this change brilliantly. It brings in a 13-week period where there could be some practical shifts. But because Venus and Mercury are in the mix, very closely in the mix, you probably want to be creative even within trying to reform things. Why not? That's a good plan. If you're in a job which is not very, very fulfilling, find one which helps you to express yourself more. But of course, finding it can be the challenge because not everybody wants to be doing more mundane jobs. But the converse can be true, Scorpio. If you've had a job that was very richly creative, you might actually be quite happy to do something that helps other people because the 6th house is very much being of service. And that actually can bring you personal satisfaction in the way the North Node wants you to gain, but just in a different way. So a lot of us will be at different points in our life journey, requiring different things. So you could go down the practical route, or you may want to be more inventive and bring more flair into those everyday connections. But then, of course, we do have the solar eclipse. Now this solar eclipse on the 29th of March in your fellow Mars-ruled Aries sign suggests over the next 6 months, if you wanted to lose weight, if you wanted to exercise more, if you wanted to alter your nutritional intake, if you wanted to look more at home cooking, growing foods, if you wanted to refine all sorts of parts of your life to simplify it, that's a great opportunity in order to do it. But then Neptune glides to join up with the energy of the solar eclipse on the 30th. Neptune's going to be here for just under 8 months, so a long old time through to the 22nd of October. So Neptune in the 6th house could bring out within you a very compassionate part of your nature. If you've ever wanted to work in, say, a care role or a hospital setting, or you wanted to work in voluntary work, or you wanted to work in a support role which helps people, this really can be very moving for you. But it's going to be augmented, of course, by Saturn. Saturn arrives on the 25th of May. But on the 18th of April, we have the punch of Mars, your traditional ruler, returning right to the top of your chart. And that ambition side of your solar return can start speaking to you again. So even if you were tempted towards a job that was more self-sacrificing, was more on behalf of person-kind, even if you go down that route, you're probably still going to want responsibility, or at the very least recognition and respect. Why not? But then Saturn plays catch up, merges with Neptune. The two are together through to the end of August. They're linking back to Pluto in your fourth house. As I mentioned before, if you had thought ever of working from home or offering a service in your local community, this collection of energy can be very positive indeed. Now, May the 27th sees a Gemini new moon conjunct Mercury. If you're thinking about grappling with your resources, long-term financial planning, a great time to revisit those, get some professional advice, and see if you can squeeze a bit more out of your assets. On June the 9th, Jupiter, the planet of growth, of optimism, of possibility, moves into Cancer, your fellow water sign, and it's going to be there for a year. The ninth house can be so enriching, but it's a very contrasting energy to the sixth house influence of Saturn and Neptune in Aries, because that's about dedication, routine, details. The ninth house wants to be free. So as Jupiter moves into that area, it is going to clash with those guys. So as much as we can say, and I feel some astrologers will be saying that Saturn and Neptune being in your sixth house in Aries, it is a new era for us all, which it is, but it's going to come with some potential snags. So Jupiter is a very contrasting energy in house 9. It's much more about breaking out, being free, traveling, doing what we want, expressing our individual and more adventurous nature that competes with the very responsible energy of the solar eclipse in Aries, and Neptune and Saturn complementing that. On June the 20th, the Sun plays catch up with Jupiter, moves into Cancer. Ordinarily, this would be a fantastic time for you to be thinking about planning a holiday or actually heading off somewhere. But that's clashing also with the position of Saturn and Neptune. Now, on June the 25th, the Cancer new moon does have an ace for you in that Mars is in a very sociable area. So if you were linking up with people that you could perhaps go away on a collective, could be a fantastic thing to do. It's still squaring up a little bit more broadly with the dreamy drifting energy of Neptune. So the details of your plan will need to be very precise. But then July the 7th, we have Uranus. Uranus has been causing quite an impact in your sector of relating. First of all, for 5 months in its seeding period in 2018, and then since March 2019. It may have seen some electric connections, some very exciting, fast-moving possibilities around relationships, but also at times a lot of unpredictability, as can happen with Uranus. Now, it's going to return back into Taurus, your sector of relating, on the 8th of November. So this is a 4-month transit. But this 4-month transit does link brilliantly with Pluto. And just to say that Uranus is a planet that's exalted in your sign. So although you are a fixed sign and understand quite a persistent, persevering approach, when things change for you, they tend to change very quickly. So there may be something that is around the 8th house, which can be to do with legacies, investments, long-term financial planning, linking back to Pluto in your 4th house of property. Something really exciting could ensue in the following 4 months. So it may be a reconstruction, it may be a purchase, a rental, but it could give you the space, Uranus, that's really important to you. or it may be that you're going to start to demonstrate your genius when it comes to a business idea that you've got, perhaps one that you could even start off from the comfort of your abode. But the link from Uranus back to Pluto, back to Saturn and Neptune, the grand minor trine, the magic triangle, is very, very powerful indeed. But obviously, the practicality of that Aries energy needs to exist with the emotional energy of Pluto and the deep transformational energy of Uranus. So that takes us through to the middle of July. Mercury, the planet of communication, starts to go into a retrograde in your work and worldly sector. Just through to the 10th of August, just be aware that there could be some chopping and changing, which could be frustrating. There is a Leo new moon on the 24th of July, so that's really pushing you into the limelight. And that's actually forging a really strong link with Uranus. So maybe you're going to go for a job that's in some kind of new sector to do with innovation in some way. Now, on August the 23rd, we get the first of two blue moons in Virgo, which is your sector of friendship. It's also about your sector of long-term plans, but that clashes with Uranus. If there's something you want to do that does require some finance, you may find that things suddenly change or are a little bit unpredictable, which could be frustrating. But the 1st of September sees Saturn return to Pisces. Yes, dull old Saturn. Well, you know, Saturn does bring a reward. If we put the application and the determination in and the persistence and the perspiration, we tend to get a reward. So Saturn returns to Pisces for one final time, but keep working at demonstrating your talents and flair. And remember, the nodal axis, the North Node, is supporting you. On the 6th of September, Uranus goes into retrograde. But on September the 7th, we have the third in the Eclipse series featuring Pisces and Virgo. This one back in Pisces like the year before. Balancing your connections to others and what you want to do as an individual comes very sharply into focus, because the second of the two Virgo new moons is a solar eclipse on the 21st, but that one is opposite Saturn. If you have got friends or associates or even interests which are inhibiting your need to express your individuality, you may need to look at that in the last few months of this year. But on the 22nd of September, the autumnal equinox gives you the chance to withdraw a little bit and just consider everything that's been going on. The Libran new moon of the 21st of October is also challenged by Saturn. So there may be some things coming into the open around your friendship situation or your love life even, which could be a little bit delicate. But on the 22nd of October, Neptune returns to Pisces. You've got Saturn and Neptune back in your sister water sign of Pisces. November the 8th sees Uranus return to your sector of relating. So really what you've been experiencing for the last couple of years comes back into play towards the end of the year, which brings us to your personal new moon. That's on the 20th of November. It forges an alliance with the retreating Mercury, so it's an inferior conjunction, as I mentioned, but it still is rich with promise because it links so perfectly with Jupiter and Neptune. Jupiter exalted in Cancer, Neptune back in its home sign of Pisces, and so therefore we have a wonderful water trine, a grand trine, and therefore your individual talents, which remember the North Node are asking you to showcase this year, get a chance for you to take more firm control. But that doesn't mean to say you can't stay in touch with your instincts, your feelings, your senses in the way that you march forwards towards the end of this year. So to recap, Scorpio, this is a year when your ambition can be strong, but you need to balance your ambition with what you need from your home and emotional life. There could be some kind of improvement around close relationships with family and neighbours, particularly if things have been a little challenged. It's not the best of years to be too over optimistic with anything speculative around money or being too free and easy with your resources. If you meet someone you fancy, don't bombard them with grand gestures, just get to know them slowly. And with Venus also in your home sign, I think there's every chance you will be reforming where you live in a way which makes it just perfect, the perfect place for you, whether it's decoratively or furniture wise or moving things around, creating the space you need. But there could be a little bit of an off and on dimension around your love life, but the nodal axis is really reassuring you that all the hard work you've put in since Neptune moved into 12, Saturn over the last couple of years, as long as you're practical in your approach, which is what that energy in Aries is asking you to do all this year, can bring you a reward. So balancing your flair with application is the key to this year. Have a great 2005.